What's up, and welcome to another edition of Locked On NBA, the biggest stories with the local experts. I'm your host, Jackson Gatlin, also host of Locked On Rockets right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Today, we're joined by Nick Angstadt from Locked On Mavericks to discuss Luka Doncic's insane play over this 6-game winning streak for the Dallas Mavericks, how they're able to still win despite missing key defensive contributors, and the possibility of a Christian Wood extension. But first, today's episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Next game, how about taking Luka Doncic to score more than 26.5 points? Or I guess at this point, you could take him to score more than 36.5 points or maybe even 46.5 points and feel pretty good about it. What about LeBron James to have more than 7.5 rebounds? How about Kevin Durant to have less than 6.5 assists and maybe Steph Curry to have more than 3.5 three-pointers made? So what is Prize Picks, right? What is this daily fantasy sports option? Basically, you pick 2 to 6 players, and if they score more or less than their Prize Picks projection, you can win up to 25 times back on your money on any entry that you submit. There's no competing against other people. It's just you versus the Prize Picks projections available. Prize Picks offers projections on any sport that you watch. That's NBA, NFL, MLB, NHL, PGA, you name it. They've got you covered over at Prize Picks. Entries can be made in 60 seconds or less. It's that simple. They offer safe and incredibly fast withdrawals. Download the PrizePicks app or go to prizepicks.com to sign up and play daily fantasy sports. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with promo code LOCKEDON. If you deposit $100, PrizePicks will give you $100. If you deposit $50, PrizePicks will give you $50. Don't forget to enter promo code LOCKEDON at sign up for an instant deposit match up to $100. Joining us now is Nick Angstadt from Locked On Mavericks. You can find wherever you listen to your podcasts, including YouTube. Just search Locked On Mavericks. The Mavs are winners of 6 straight, 7 of their last 10, including a ridiculous overtime win against the New York Knicks, where Luka Doncic had 60 points, 21 rebounds, 10 assists, a triple-double. Nick, how do you even begin to describe the level at which Luka Doncic is playing currently?
Just like that, just like that. That's the only way really that you can describe it. You just start the Luka Doncic dance on the pod and you're just like, he's doing things that we've never seen a player do before. The 60-21-10 game, a stat line that has never been done in NBA history, not Oscar, not Wilt, not nobody. It's insane to watch him do the things that he's doing, and he's been doing it with really good efficiency, too. That's kind of the thing that's really stood out over this last couple stretch here, is that Luka is not only scoring, 45.5 points over the last 5 games on average. He's shooting 60% from the field, 50% from 3, and getting to the free throw line 15 times. It's insane how many free throws he's taking right now, and just the way that he's getting his points, the way that he's just carrying this team, right? The Mavericks are in this situation where, it's kind of was Luka or nothing to begin with, and then they lose, but then they had this defense that they built around, and they're like, all right, well, we can at least lean on our defense. Then Maxi Kleber goes down, Dorian Finney-Smith goes down, Josh Green goes down. They're all still out. They've been out this entire streak, and it's just been leaning on offense and leaning on, all right, can Luka be really good? And you're like, yes, that's been the answer so far.
Yeah, I mean, just over the win streak, right? You mentioned, over the last 5 games, but over the 6-game win streak, he's shooting 59% from the floor, 47% from downtown. Nick, when you look at like the MVP race, right, and trying to kind of establish, okay, who's leading the MVP race, who's at the top, guys sliding up and down, Luka, Jokic, Tatum. How do you weigh Luka, who is seemingly doing everything he needs for this team, for the Mavericks team to win, versus Tatum or Jokic, who are kind of elevating their teams to a level where they're at the top of their respective conferences? How do you evaluate that?
Well, you look at that. I do like to give credit for wins, right? I like when one of the top teams, like you have to be one of the top teams. I didn't like the Westbrook year where he's like 6th in the West. And you're like, okay, well, I guess we can give it to him. It's an incredible season, and now we're just seeing triple doubles like all over the place, But he's only 3 games back from the Nuggets. That's not too far back, right? So if you're just going to say wins, is three games enough to elevate Jokic over Luka right now? And so you start trying to parse those things like that. And he's not out of the realm where the team is right now. They're 4th in the West. That's well into the realm of giving him MVP consideration. I think BetOnline still has him as the top MVP odds getter the last time I checked. And he should be right now because of all the talk that's going to be like around him right now. And so if you ask me today, I don't know if I give it to him today, but if we just take MVP based on most valuable player, defining those 3 words, he's the most valuable player. Think about his team compared to even the Nuggets or the Celtics or the Nets or the Bucks, whoever else. He's got the worst supporting cast around him. And so if you're going to say who's the most valuable to their team, you look at what Luka's doing right now. He's having to go off for 60 points just to beat a Knicks team without Jalen Brunson and basically without RJ Barrett. He's having to go off for 50 to beat a Spurs team that was like literally the worst team in the NBA over the last 2 months. So he's been the most valuable.
And we may have just answered this question, but why is it that the Mavs are struggling to beat some of these bad teams, right? Like we see Luka putting up these like historic numbers. Is it just because the supporting cast hasn't been that adequate to this point, or is there more kind of beyond, what are you seeing that's causing the Mavs to have, these issues against some of these bad teams?
Well, the interesting thing about them is they also have the most wins against teams above 500 in the West. They have 12. They're 12-8 against teams above 500. They're 9-8 against teams below 500. They recently just got that mark above 500. And it's really just, are they going to take this team seriously or not? Each and every night. They've had I think they had 6 or 7 losses at the beginning of the season where a player on the other team was missing. It was the Pelicans without Zion and Ingram. It was the Magic without Paolo Banchero. It was like every time you seemed like you would get a break in a matchup, the Mavericks would just, we can go out there. We'll do whatever we want. And what it comes down to is their defense is so predicated on, are you locked in? Can you turn it on? Can you flip the switch? Can everybody be locked in? It has to be all 5 guys interconnected. You can't just rely on a Rudy Gobert or an Anthony Davis or a Jaren Jackson or somebody like that to bail you out from the back, or a Marcus Smart to defend the point of attack so well that everybody else can kind of loosen up a little bit. It has to be everybody because they don't have that kind of personnel. And so when you come into a matchup and you're like, they don't have Paolo Banchero. They don't have this guy. We can just, it is what it is. That's when you come up with these losses these games like against the Spurs the other night where the Mavericks are allowing like 130 point like per 100 possession defensive rating, which is just like brutal against a Spurs team that had been terrible.
Look, and on top of all this, over these last 8 or so games, Mavs are 6-2 with Christian Wood now in the starting lineup over at least this most recent stretch.
Spread the propaganda, Jackson. I know you want to.
We're working the Christian Wood propaganda here. Look, he's averaging 19.5 points on 52% shooting, 40% from deep during the stretch. What is he unlocking for the Mavericks during the stretch? Because I know this has been kind of a back and forth, right? Kind of a divisive topic amongst Mavericks fans, right? Should Christian Wood be starting? Is Jason Kidd doing the right thing, bringing him off the bench? Like, kind of where are you at with what Christian Wood is doing for this Mavericks team over this most recent stretch?
Yeah, when he and Luka are on the court together, they're an incredible offense. They have so many different options. Christian Wood has been really good at the pick and roll, pick and pop, where he's been relocating in certain spots where he gets wide open threes. Like, he's really learning how to play with Luka. You can tell he really likes playing with Luka too, because he takes advantage of a lot of the space that Luka allows and the attention that Luka gets. And so you like that part of it. And then you're like, okay, well, how far can
I like the pregnant pause. There's like a moment there where Nick gave like 2 seconds before he goes into his next, but there's the other side of it.
But here's the reason why he's not an all-star, right? Like, basically that's the but I'm going into is Jason Kidd still does not really trust him, I don't think. He's having to, but the only reason why he's in the starting lineup right now is because of the injuries to those guys I mentioned earlier. And JaVale McGee can't play at all. They literally can't even play him. Dwight Powell had a brief injury. And so you're just, okay, well, we got to put Christian Wood because we literally have no other bigs to throw out there. And so he's been thrust into this role. And so Jason Kidd has a now infamous quote the other day that was
Twitter isn't the coach or the player.
And so Twitter was calling for Christian Wood to start, and now Christian Wood is starting. You're seeing this win streak, and it's a little bit of confirmation bias because they've been playing against these bad teams. Luka's having to go off like this, but we are getting a good sample size now of what Luka and Christian Wood do look like together and what it's like to try and create a competent defense and a competent team around those two.
You mentioned the confirmation bias there. I mean, look, Christian Wood is extension eligible, right? Like, has he done enough to warrant an extension? And if not, what do you need to see more of to feel like if the Mavs decide to put pen to paper and ink an extension for Christian Wood, what would make you feel confident about that extension moving forward?
For the Mavericks, there is nothing. Here's the conundrum with Christian Wood and this dilemma with his extension. So Christian Wood and his camp believe him to be an all-star, right? They believe him to be this type of player that is it should be an all-star in the West. There may have been a tweet sent to me from Stan Van Gundy where Stan Van Gundy said that he should be an all-star, and that may have been like, hey, look, this is a guy that thinks that he should be an all-star recently. And so you're thinking about that, and then you're also thinking about he's 27. He hasn't made a ton of money in his career. The deal that he got from, what was it, the Rockets or the Pistons, he got that deal, and it was, it's fine. He's making $14 million this year. I think he's made like $30 million or something in his career. This is his one shot. This is his one shot to make a really big payday in the NBA. So will he take a 4-year, $77 million deal that'll pay him like $17 million the first year, $21 million in the last year? On his camp, probably not, right? Like he probably thinks he's worth more than that. And in the Jaren Jackson Ayton range, right? And then you start to look at that, and some people may like bat their eyes at that and be like, oh my gosh, are you serious? But that's the way that their camp thinks about it. And then on the Mavericks side, do they want to commit the years to him? It's not even about the dollar amounts. It's about the years that they're going to commit to him. We've seen Christian Wood now with the Mavericks for a couple months in a contract year. What will he look like when he's settled in the second year of a deal like that? And you're saying, okay, well now you're having to still like be on your best behavior and do all these things, and we're expecting you to play like this when it's like this. Or we've seen some of the situations he's run into with coaches in the past and things like that. That's the conundrum the Mavericks are running into. He's said all the right things. He's doing all the right things right now. There's no reason that I've seen on the surface to look at and say, all right, maybe they shouldn't sign him. But the Mavericks still, I don't know if you can prove that in the next 2 months or 6 weeks or something before the trade deadline for the Mavericks to be okay with, all right, we're going to give you a 4-year deal. And for Christian Wood to even take it.
Now, Nick, what's just last thing here for you? What's the latest? You mentioned a couple times here as we're kind of discussing the Mavericks. What's the latest on the injury report with the Mavericks? You got Maxi Kleber, Dorian Finney-Smith, Josh Green. What's the latest on these guys? When can we expect some of these guys to return to the lineup?
Well, Maxi Kleber is probably not going to return until around the playoffs. Probably April is around the time he's going to have to return from that hamstring. That's been a real tough one. Josh Green is supposed to be evaluated this weekend, and so we'll see what happens with him. He has not started full contact drills yet. Dorian Finney-Smith, the abductor strain, that'll probably be another 2 weeks or so. I don't know. Don't quote me on that one. That one's one that's kind of a weird injury. We're not exactly sure when he's going to come back just yet. But those are the 3 guys, and those are the only 3 guys in the injury report. They're just such big parts. They're literally 3 of the Mavs' 4 best defenders on the team, with a team that prides itself and like built itself around this defensive identity. So they just need any of those guys back soon.
Yeah, don't quote him on that with the voice that he's using on this very podcast at this very moment. But can Luka Doncic keep his insane production level going? Are the Mavs potentially, what's going to happen with Christian Wood? Is he going to get a contract extension moving forward? You're going to have to cover for all of that and more over at Locked On Mavericks. But as always, appreciate you stopping by for Locked On NBA with me, Nick.
I need a recovery beer.